This episode of the Beyond the Physics podcast is brought to you by you. So if you'd like to support the podcast, please leave a rating and review and consider subscribing at patreon.com/beyondthephysics. This is Beyond the Physics. All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Physics. This is Joseph Guzman, and I'm joined with
Irene Roman.
And today we got an update for Beyond the Physics. It's been about a year since we updated last. Spring 2022. That's when we last recorded something. Can you believe it's been that long?
No. Too much has happened in the last year.
Yeah, a lot has happened. Overall, I'd say mostly traumatic things. But
that's a way to lead into it all.
Yeah, but so anyways, so we're just here to catch you up on what's been going on in our lives. Key you in on some of this traumatic shit. Maybe they'll give you some insight as to why we haven't recorded in, over a year. But so, yeah, where do you want to... Well, I guess before we talk about that, just quickly I want to check in with you. Like, how are you feeling? Like, how are you doing today?
Me? How am I feeling today? I'm feeling good overall. I guess, since I feel like I'm always behind, but that's nothing new in terms of work. I feel like a little bit anxious about it. And then plus because I have this trip coming up, which we're going to talk about in a little bit anyway. But just a little spoiler, I'm going on a summer school trip in 2 weeks or so. So I'm a little bit nervous in terms of preparation for the school. But I think overall I'm feeling good. What about you?
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit interesting. Like, I had a crazy dream last night. And if you know me, I typically don't remember my dreams. It's like maybe 1 to 5% of the time I can remember what I dreamt. So it's pretty atypical and it's kind of intense. So it put me in a bit of a weird mood this morning. But then, I went to therapy and then I worked out and stuff. So now I'm feeling energized and feeling good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
anyways, thanks for sharing that. I'll take a moment to let you, the audience member, share how you're doing. Okay, that's a rhetorical question, so let's move on. Oh shoot. Okay, sorry. Technical difficulties in the background. Okay. So anyways, let's pick up from where we last did our update, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess last year, since it's been so long since we recorded a podcast, I don't even know if I remember what the last thing that happened was, but since most likely it was in spring 2022, I think at that point I hadn't yet defended my prospectus. So since probably different programs have different requirements, our PhD program, you have to pass two exams. One is the written qualification preliminary exam, which is essentially just the major topics in physics. We have to pass a written exam. And then the second is this thing that we call a prospectus, where we essentially just propose our PhD project. And we have a committee that we choose of faculty members, and then they basically give us the okay or not. If we pass, we're officially going to be doctoral candidates. So you're not officially doctoral candidate until you pass those two things. So I think at that point I hadn't passed it yet, and I was probably really busy last spring putting together my document, a written document, and then preparing the presentation. And that was pretty stressful. I hate giving presentations, and I'm like, get pretty anxious, and I'm probably a little bit socially anxious in general. So I guess for me, it was like pretty hard kind of working through all of that. I managed to do the presentation, and I actually think it went pretty well. And it's weird because I'm so anxious that then when I get into there, it's like I click into another person. I feel like it's like the presentation Irene comes out and she takes over and she does this presentation. Like I say all these things that I don't even know how I know them sometimes. But I guess I am like picking up information. And even though I'm not very confident in my like knowledge, the knowledge comes out somehow. And then, so, I did well on it, and then I passed it. And so now I'm officially a doctoral candidate.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Even though it was a year ago, right? So I've been for a year, but since you guys haven't heard updates, now you know. So I was really happy about that, and I was proud for that to happen. And then after that, essentially, I got accepted into the C-Tech summer school, which is in Pittsburgh. And that was in July, the beginning of July, for about like 10 days. So this is 2022 again, this is last year. And that would be like the first time that I was going to be away from like where I'm here now, that I've been for a few years. And I was nervous about it. And being in, in a new town and stuff, and I'd be away from home. So then I had a few of my other like group mates were going as well, so at least I had like support from them. But I'd say that, I don't know, I guess it was hard for me emotionally to be away from home and like with, my dog Sage. She's always like a comfort for me, and I guess like I am a little bit socially anxious, so it was I guess testing me in a lot of different levels, I guess, being in that environment. And I think being in the physics environment in general is a little bit triggering for me, because sometimes like I don't have that much confidence in my abilities. So then when I was in the summer school with like all of these people that I felt had a lot more knowledge in me, and then it was like everyone they just, I don't know, some of them just were like naturally like really conversational about the material and asking questions, and then my group mates were like answering a lot, and they looked like star pupils and stuff, and I guess I didn't process the information as quickly, and also like the anxiety of the whole environment makes it hard for me to really even process information, so I'm kind of like in a mental block in a way because of like how overwhelmed I am. So the experience was a little bit hard, and I feel like I probably had like some panic attacks a few times from like just being so overwhelmed with all of the stimuli and information and anxiety that I have being in like the physics environment. So it made me realize that I want to figure out how I can find a way to be more comfortable in the environment and feel more confident in myself, and be okay, like, okay, even if I perceive myself as not very knowledgeable, to be okay with that, even if, regardless if that's true or not true, just like being okay with knowing like it's okay that it's okay if I don't really know the material, or it's okay if it takes me a little bit more time to like understand or put the pieces together because I have to work through all of these other things. Being kind to myself in the situations where like I am feeling overwhelmed, and being able to take the space that I need and feeling like I'm deserved that space. So I mean, those are all things that the experience was good. I think I had a good time, and I got to like connect with other people and learn about some other material that I didn't know. There's some interesting lectures and lecturers that came. But it also brought up these other issues that I realized that I do want to work on in general.
Yeah. I'm wondering, if you could share more around that. Basically, the things I'm wondering at the moment are like what it was like for you to go through those panic attacks, like what it felt like, how would you describe it, and or how you processed those events, like how did you eventually come out of the panic attack. If there's anything that you think might be helpful for other people to identify, even in myself now, I'm curious, given some things that I've experienced in the past few months. Learning more about that could be helpful to me. And then if you think that is just kind of a fugue state and it just you came out of it when you came out of it, then I guess maybe what you're planning on doing to maybe make it a little bit of a smoother ride in the future, or if there's anything that you're planning on doing.
Well, in terms of it, like you said, this fugue state, it's a little bit, I'd say like it's like a half fugue state where it's like I don't feel like I'm in the normal reality, if that makes sense of how to explain that. I don't know. It feels like a way that it feels in a way sometimes that I've pushed like up against the boundary of like reality and something more outside of that. And I don't know why is how I explain it. But it gets a little bit confusing because it's like, it happens because I get so overwhelmed with like everything that's going on. Like I take too much stimuli in, and then like on my internal processes too, like all these emotions are just kind of exploding. And then so it gets to a point where like they're colliding and you're kind of confused, even yourself, as to like what you're feeling, but you know that you're in this kind of panic state. And I used to get this a lot. In high school, it was like so many times, like at least probably once a day, I'd be having like some kind of like panic attack or this type of state. And then, you know, in college I had this too, like kind of rolling over, and then, you know, it would be less frequent. And then I started working with like some therapists and stuff, and I worked through a lot of issues, and I started taking some antidepressive medications and stuff, and all of that stuff helps. And, you know, being diagnosed with ADHD, and then realizing that like a big part of the overwhelm that I get is also just from so much stimuli that I get, that like my mind is not very good at like filtering it out. So it's like just I'm bombarded with all this information, and it gets overwhelming. So it's like a bunch of this stuff together. So like being treated for that has helped a lot, right? And being more like aware of how this works, how those things interact within myself. And that's just like individual too. Like every person that has ADHD is not going to have that same experience. So it's something that you need to like kind of, I think you need a professional to kind of work with to figure those details out. But in the moment, being like that, I just, in a way, I had to let it kind of ride through. But also typically, like here we have Sage. I have Sage, my puppy girl. So she helps, like if I get into a state like that, she helps me back into present. Like she'll like lick my face and it'll like bring me back. If I don't have, I guess something that in general will help is to find a way to bring myself back into presence. So for example, when I was there and I near the end, I started realizing I was having this issue again. So when I started to feel really overwhelmed, I would ditch some of the classes if I couldn't take it, and I feel like that's okay, I need to do this. And then they had a park around there, and I would just like go walking in the trails, and it's just like I would just do something physical to get me like more present in the moment, and then gets me tired too, physically tired. So I would just walk for a really long time, and that's always been one of my coping mechanisms, is nature, and like just engaging in nature. And it'll help me a lot, just like doing something like that. Like I even like picked up some sticks and started whittling some sticks, and that just doing that kind of repetitive motion, being in nature. And then in a way I was like, oh, let's see if I can craft a shape or something. And then thinking of doing something artistic, all of that stuff kind of helps as an outlet. Or a distraction outlet, being present, so I could kind of get myself away from those feelings. But it's not like, you know, it still happened, right? So it's kind of like there's no way to really foolproof way of like avoiding that. It's like if that's something you are predisposed to, that's something that unfortunately you're gonna have to like work through your life in general. And I don't know. I mean, I think that part of the experience was hard, but there are things that I was proud of myself for, like seeing that I could get myself out of that state way more quickly than I could in the past, right? But it also made me realize that, yeah, I still am susceptible to that, right? So it's like I'm in a whole new environment, and I didn't have that issue when I'm back here at home, but then like going back to the new environment, I realized that, yeah, you know, the instability there can really cause a lot of issues, right? So
yeah. Yeah, okay. I mean, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, finding presence in nature is at least something actionable, and being present in your body is something that I think is general advice. But, you know, obviously having a professional is probably the better thing to do in general. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. So maybe I should talk about what it was like here with Sage. Because while you were in summer school at C-Tech, I was here and I was taking care of Sage. And so, you know, we walk in this park that's across the street, and I would take her every day, and we'd walk for like an hour, and then we'd come back home. But one day when I was walking her, we do let her off leash in general sometimes, like in very specific areas, because the park we go to is like, it's kind of like a reserve, I guess you could say, like a nature reserve. And there's often not many people there, and we only do it in like very specific locations, and she is pretty good recall. She's like pretty good in general about coming back. But anyway, so there's one point when we go into the park. It was only like not far into the entrance. We only walked like 2 minutes or something. And I let her off leash for this, you know, this small portion, and she goes somewhere where I can't see her. And then she comes back and she's acting all weird, and she's like, she starts rolling in the grass, and it looks like she's uncomfortable or in pain or something. I thought she might have like run into an anthill or something. In the past, she's like encountered ants and had similar behavior. But anyways, she was acting really weird, and I'm like, what's going on? She didn't yelp or anything. So then I call you while you're in Pittsburgh, and I'm like, what should I do? And basically I just decided, you know, like, okay, she's acting weird. Let's play it safe. Let's go home. So I start walking her home, and she's like kind of struggling to get home. Like, that was her shaking in the background. So there's a happy end to the story. But anyway, she's like limping along, and then we get home, and then I'm like, okay, what should I do? Yeah, we're talking about you. So I call the vet. And then I take her to the vet like immediately, like right when we get home, and I put her in the car, and then I drive to the vet. And on the way to the vet, her face is swelling up like a balloon. Like within the span of 30 minutes, like her face had like just blown up. And so I drop her off at the vet, and they treat her with Antivenin. It was a suspected snake bite. You know, I believe there was a snake bite, and they confirmed that was their suspicion as well. So she got Antivenin that night, and she stayed overnight, and it seemed like she recovered pretty well from that. It took like maybe 2 days of her being in observation, but pretty much right away she came back, and She still had some inflammation that hung around for like a week. I don't know if you remember some of the pictures I sent you, but she had like a big old goozle.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember the pictures.
Yeah, so she still had some inflammation for a while, and I think when you first came back, she still had some.
A little bit of a goozle, yeah.
Yeah, around her neck is like still kind of inflamed. Looked like a chubby neck.
Yeah, that happened just a few days before I was coming back when she got bit.
Yeah, so it was pretty stressful. And little did we know that was only the beginning of the journey, because a couple weeks after that, she started presenting with lameness in her leg, and there's so many details of the story that like we experienced, and I attempted to go through all of them, but I guess they're not necessarily relevant. But yeah, she was presenting with lameness in the leg, and so we took her to a vet, and they did an x-ray, and they're like, oh, it's probably nothing. They gave us some basically aspirin or Motrin or whatever, but then the next day she still wasn't doing well. I think she vomited or something that night.
And she wouldn't eat, and that's something she would never do, that because she loves food so much and she eats everything you could give her.
Yeah, she's super food motivated. Like that's the one thing she loves.
And like I even cooked her steak and all the food she loves, and she wouldn't eat any of it. So I knew there was something majorly wrong with her.
Yeah. So then we took her back. We took her to a different vet because we weren't very happy with the treatment at the other vet that did the x-ray and said that, oh, she's probably fine. We wanted a second opinion, and yeah, they said that she's in rough shape and her kidney levels were pretty bad. She was going into kidney failure. And they kept her for a few days. I forget how long. They kept her for a while, but she kept getting worse and worse and worse. And they're like, we don't think she's going to survive here. And so she needs like some specialized care if she's going to make it. And so we spent all this time researching, and you brought up like, oh, what about dialysis? Like you did some research, and then that clicked in the vet's mind like, oh yeah, she could be a good candidate for dialysis. And actually there's this university that's a few hours away that does provide dialysis for pets, which is very rare. Because, well, anyways, there's technical reasons behind that, but because they don't do dialysis treatment as like a permanent solution for pets, right? Whereas they might do that for a human. It has to be like an acute, like something acute happened, and that there's a possibility that they can recover in the short term,
Yeah.
Because it's very expensive, and, they don't want to keep a pet on there indefinitely. So Sage fit a lot of the categories. She was in severe kidney failure. Ugh. Just thinking that does tie into like later on to other things that happened in the year, of like putting into context how severe her kidney failure was. What was the ratio? It was like
it was like 9.99 or something. It was like I think like kidney failure starts at like 2.0. I don't know what the units are, to be honest.
Was it like
creatinine levels?
Yeah. Is it protein creatinine or something? Some ratio in the kidney.
But like I think, yeah, her level was at like 9 point something. It was like the highest level, like severe kidney failure level.
Yeah.
At some point, it just kept going up and up and up.
Yeah. So anyways, once we brought up the dialysis, they're like, okay, this university hours away does do dialysis, but they don't typically take in just dogs off they don't take appointments or whatever. And so they said like, oh, we'll put in we'll try and advocate for you and get you set up with them. And once they presented Sage's case to the doctors, they're like, okay, yeah, she does seem like a good candidate for dialysis, so you can bring her here. So they made an exception for Sage. And then, so we decided at that moment, like, okay, dialysis, could cost, they let us know that dialysis, if they were going to do that treatment, starts at $10,000.
Yeah.
Right? Because she's going to be on it for weeks. Right. Mm-hmm. And then they're constantly observing her that whole time. So it starts at $10,000. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do whatever it takes to save our dog. So I'm going to go take her. And, so we were aligned in that. And so we took her, and it, like I said, it was a couple hours away. And so it was pretty inconvenient. There was a lot of traveling, back and forth. On the way there, I was really scared because she could barely keep her eyes open, and she's like falling over and stuff, and she looked really terrible. And so it was really touch and go there. The other thing going on in the background for me, school-wise, is I'm preparing to take my qualification exam. Right? Like Irene mentioned, she passed the written part of the exam a long time ago. But for one reason or the other, I kept getting extensions. When she passed, I had food poisoning, and I didn't take the test. And
Salmonella.
Yeah, salmonella. And anyways, one reason or other, kept getting delayed. And so I was going to first take it in August. And I forget when this was happening with Sage, in July or whatever.
Yeah.
June, July.
And then into August with when she had the kidney problems.
Yeah. So anyways, like I've been trying to work really hard, like while I'm taking care of Sage by myself, trying to prepare for this exam and stuff. And then this thing happens with Sage, and I'm like, okay, like I really wanted to study a lot more than I had at this point. But I'm like, right now Sage is my priority. If I, fail this test or whatever, and, I manage to, keep it together for my dog, and, she comes home at the end of the day and they kick me out, like whatever. Like I was willing to accept that at that point. So I was just like, okay, whatever. I'm fully committed to trying to save our dog. And so anyways, for weeks, we're like going back and forth to this, pet hospital. And she ended up not needing dialysis. They, observed her and they considered her for it. But they found that once they took her off fluids and stuff, she started like urinating again, and like she kind of got better herself with just like some supportive care. Yeah. Without dialysis. So that was pretty fortunate, but she was still there for weeks, and it was still very expensive. But we're very fortunate to have, family that was willing to support us in that, and like, chip in. So anyways, now the long story short of it is that Sage made it out of there, and she had a lot of medications too when she came out. Like she was on some chemo drugs. She was on like an immunosuppressant. She was on a special kidney diet. She was taking like, 5-6 pills or something like a day, and the special kidney diet. And it was like, we don't know if she'll ever go back to quote unquote normal, and so that was pretty scary. And so I think it was every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, we had to take her into every 2 weeks, we had to take her into our local vet, and they would continually check her like kidney levels and everything, and slowly wean her off the medication to make sure that she could support herself. And so all those vet visits were really expensive too. But I'm happy to report that she's not on a kidney diet. She came off of all of the medications, and she's living a totally normal life.
Back to normal life.
Yeah.
She made a 100% recovery.
Yeah, on her own. Right. And it was like, she was really on the brink of death for like a while, and it was pretty scary. But I'm so happy that it ended up where it was. That was a really stressful moment, because we were presented with like a lot of decisions of like, okay, do we take her to like, it started with just like lameness in the leg. And then it's like, if we didn't take it seriously, then what would have happened? Then when we take her to the other vet and they're like, we don't know if she's going to make it, you can keep her here, or we don't know what you want to do, but whatever we're doing is not working. And then, had to do the research to find some other hospital, and like you bringing up dialysis and so on and so forth. And like, there were so many obstacles, and I felt like we really, as a team, navigated that very well. And the result is that our dog is alive and here with us.
And she made 100% recovery. So, I mean, it's the best possible outcome that we could hope for.
Yeah. And so if you're religious, you might be tempted to conclude, that was a miracle, and I wouldn't be opposed to that type of, framing of it. It was pretty miraculous.
Yeah, it was miraculous.
So she's a special dog. She brings me a lot of joy, and I'm glad that she's, okay and here with us. But anyway, so that summer was super stressful because of that event that happened with Sage. And sorry, we've been talking about this for a while, I'm sure, but the reason why it happened in the first place, the hypothesis by the doctor that was treating her at this hospital that does dialysis, was what do they call it again? I forget.
Serum sickness?
Right. Yeah, they thought it was serum sickness, right?
Like an effect. It's like her immune system, or I guess because sometimes the snake venom has like really large horse proteins, right? Because that's how they extract the antibodies from horses. And then I guess this happens a lot in humans, that they have like an adverse reaction. Their own body is like, the immune system is attacking these proteins, and then it can end up attacking the body. Yeah. But they don't have that much literature at all, basically, on this happening in dogs. But it can happen, right? Yeah. So like a hypothesis is that potentially this was a reaction to those proteins in the antivenom. And then that led to her like attacking her own kidneys. Mm-hmm. Which is like essentially she was breaking down tons of proteins all over her body. Like she lost so much of her muscle weight, her muscles. Like she was very bony after that, but we plumped her back up. But yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of literature on it. So they even said that they wanted to write some paper about her case because.
Yeah, and I think they did, right? Like, yeah, so there's so little literature on it that Sage had a paper written about her, about this experience, to try to document whether or not it was serum sickness. And they haven't really kept up to date with us as to like what the conclusion was. But so maybe I just assume that it's kind of inconclusive. But anyway, so it's a very rare thing to happen. Basically, an adverse reaction to the antivenom is the main hypothesis. But as Irene was saying, it could be like in humans, it happens like typically as adverse reactions to vaccines or something like that.
Yeah, it could happen. Yeah.
So Sage had like a lepto vaccine a few days before that, so it could have been some vaccine reaction.
Yeah, I mean, and I think lepto vaccines can have been some dogs reported to have reactions like that though. So it's kind of like it's inconclusive because those two things I think both could have been a cause. Yeah. But
so anyways, pretty crazy thing. I guess it's just like a 1 in a million like freak accident or whatever, freak chance thing. But
yeah, it was just so much that I just felt like I clicked into this like, I don't know, they call mom mode or whatever. Mm-hmm. I know it's funny to say that for your dog, but yeah, I love her so much. I was like, oh, we have to save her. Like we just have to find the best solutions possible. Like we considered everything. We're quick to act. Yeah. Like you said, I think we did a really good job together as a team to save her. So at least I gain confidence in that when I need to, get something done really important, that it's literally life or death. Yeah. And I can click into that state and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's a lucky dog too to have us, I guess.
Hopefully that never happens again.
Yeah, we're much more cognizant about letting her off leash or whatever, so.
And learning more about the snakes and their behaviors and stuff to make sure that. Yeah. Like, we shouldn't be letting her off after brains and stuff.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, in general, we've been much more cautious. But so anyways, so then I guess one question is, like, basically we got back with Sage, and then a few days later I had to take the qualification exam. So it's like, how did that go? Like, because I was just like, okay, whatever. I know what I know. Whatever I get, that's just going to have to be good enough. So I went in there with very low expectations. So I just like, okay, I haven't really gotten to prepare for this test that, I'm super anxious about. And I'm kind of convinced that I'm going to fail. But I go in and I try my best anyways. And they recently changed the exam. So they broke it up into 4 like mini tests, I guess you could say. And, if you pass one, then on the next go around, you don't have to repeat that. And then you have to pass all 4 independently was the new thing. So when I took those 4 tests, I ended up passing half of them. I forget what they were.
Thermo.
Oh, yeah.
And E&M.
Okay, yeah. I passed Stat Mech, and I got the highest score on that one. That was nice to hear. And then E&M was a total surprise because I had historically done pretty poorly in that class. But it was the first test I passed. So, explain that one. Who the hell knows? And then, so I did have to take the other 2 tests again in the winter. And so I had to take this stupid class to prepare for those tests in the fall. But then I'm happy to report that, in the winter, I had to take those tests on my birthday, which was the worst.
Yeah, what a birthday present.
Yeah. So I had to take those tests on my birthday, the last 2, and I ended up passing both of them.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I passed the qualification exam, and I had 1 attempt to spare. So, yeah, that was really good. I was very happy about that. And I think that experience with Sage actually was pretty pivotal in that, in the sense that if I didn't have that experience, it might have actually been more counterproductive to study. It might have made me more anxious and nervous rather than helpful,
Yeah.
Because it turned out I could do okay enough even without it.
You're more or less prepared, right?
Yeah. Like somewhere, like you were saying about like you presenting, somewhere that knowledge is in there. Like I'm not sure exactly how I access it or whatever, but it worked out. So yeah,
that's great.
And I think it marks a pretty big shift in terms of my confidence, because I felt like I was plagued with like imposter syndrome and like, what am I doing here, blah, blah, blah. But as soon as I passed the exam, it's kind of like, okay, now I can do it. I guess it was really just that one test that I was like convinced that I'm not going to pass this thing, But once that obstacle was out of the way, I'm like, okay, everything else is just like whether or not I can mentally tolerate it or like emotionally tolerate it. But like in terms of my capabilities, I think I could do the rest easy, So yeah, it's been pretty good since then.
That's awesome. So like you think that was just a big...
Yeah, the qualification exam is just such shit, It's such a terrible system. Because it's like, it's so destabilizing, and it seems just like inherently toxic, of like trying to make grad students feel small, of like you have to prove yourself to be here and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're gone, It's just, yeah, it just seems like a shitty system. It seems like it's designed to make you feel that way. It's designed to make you feel like I'm not good enough. So, yeah, it's good to have that out of the way.
Yeah. I would agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how necessary it is at all, but
yeah,
that can be a whole discussion.
Yeah, I would argue that it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. But so after I passed the quals, then it was into the winter break.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had this plan to go on this like hiking trip with some of our friends for like a week. And I guess that was going to be like my delayed birthday celebration.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But then some family medical emergencies came up. That's irrelevant to Irene, so I don't know how much you want to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess this would probably be like the lowest point of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially we're going on this trip, and the day before the trip my father had this procedure, which you guys might have heard him. He's been in our podcast in the past on the Father's Day special. And he had a procedure done that they found some polyps in his bladder.
Mm-hmm.
And he had bladder cancer in the past, and they were just like little polyps. They had removed them like a few months before, like some routine procedure, and then they were just gonna give him like as a precaution, they're gonna give him this procedure where they like flush the bladder with BCG bacteria, which is essentially like a really slow growing bacteria that they derive from a tuberculosis vaccine. I know when I say it sounds kind of like crazy, but apparently it's this more like kind of common procedure now. It's like an immunotherapy. So essentially your immune system will then I think it takes off the lining of the bladder, to take the polyps, and then it would remove any remnants of these cancerous cells. So it's something that they seem pretty confident about, this procedure. And so he got it done, and then that was like probably the day before we were going to go on our trip. And I called him and after the procedure, and he said, oh yeah, I'm doing great. Like he was doing all this work in the house, and then he said he was feeling a little bit sick, like some fever, but that the doctors had said that might happen for the next 24 hours after the procedure because the immune system is firing up, and that's completely normal. But so he seemed okay or whatever, and then I'm like, okay. And then my mom said, oh yeah, if he still has a fever tomorrow, we'll take him to the doctor. Well, then the next day I get a call from my sister that's saying that they're in the hospital, that my dad overnight, I guess he got really bad and he was unresponsive, and my mom tried to wake him up and he wouldn't wake up, so she called the ambulance. And it sounded pretty traumatic for my mom because I think he had vomited in his sleep too. And so the ambulance came, and then essentially I rushed, and you came with me, and we both rushed to see them to the hospital. And my dad was unresponsive still. And apparently he went into septic shock. And I was like trying to figure out, okay, what could have happened? And I'm doing all this crazy, just reading scientific article after scientific article related to the procedure and stuff. But essentially what I think happened, and what doctors think happened, is that maybe when he was getting the procedure done, they could have introduced some bacteria into the bladder, I guess, other than the BCG. But then since his immune system was already like weakened from having to fight that, then I think like essentially this other bacteria, which ended up being E. coli, got into his bloodstream, and then he had sepsis. And it was like a really fast, it's just one day, right? 1 to 2 days, and it was incredibly, like it just overtook his body, and he went into septic shock. Well, then we were there in the hospital for like a week, hoping, we were there all the time asking tons of questions, trying to make sure they know that we're engaged with what's going on. And like the doctors seems like they were trying everything that they could do, and so they kept me updated on his like kidney levels and everything. And like they were pretty bad at some point, not nearly as bad as Sage's were. And then they were getting better, and doctors looked hopeful, like, oh, he's gonna, like in the middle of the week, that he was getting better.
Yeah. Was that because like they did the culture and they found the E. coli, and then they did the antibiotic, and
they gave him the correct antibiotic for the E. coli because it was a resistant strain of E. coli, so they had to give like a harder antibiotic. But it was working. And then he was doing better. And then all of a sudden his lungs couldn't take in oxygen, and essentially he just got secondary pneumonia from the hospital, which is like something that happens right in the hospital, because he had to have the ventilator there.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit frustrating for me still. I'm a little bit upset about everything, but I mean, the medical field is not perfect, and it just seems so like inexact sometimes. So then he got a secondary infection, and at that point I pretty much thought that there wasn't a way that he could make it. Like, he was already struggling, and he had congestive heart failure, so his heart only worked at like 30%. So he's already working with a really weakened heart, and then he has the sepsis infection. You might have been fighting about the pneumonia, and having all the antibiotics, it's like the antibiotics weren't helping with the pneumonia anymore. So he got the secondary pneumonia, and then unfortunately he didn't make it. So then that's happened in December, the week before Christmas. My dad was so excited. He had all these plans for the holidays, and he didn't make it. So then we spent Christmas planning the funeral, and it was like really hard. And it's still like, the grieving process takes a long time, right? So it's like up and down. Still I have moments even now where like I'm sad, because I'm like, okay, he was the one that always supported me in science, and then like I didn't even get my PhD, and I really wanted him to see me be able to like get the PhD. He was so proud of me, and I wanted him, I wanted him to be proud of me. I wanted to see him be like, oh wow, she got the PhD. She's, read my dissertation. I let him read my prospectus, and he thought it was so cool. And that would have been great if he could actually read my whole thesis at the end. And he was always interested in that stuff. And I told him I told him I was going to teach him about gravity and the work that I was doing, and unitarity. And then like I didn't have a chance to, because it was so unexpected, right? So, and then like my mom is having a really hard time, obviously. They've been together basically 40 years, and it's like her whole life was with him, so now she doesn't know how to live her life. And I'm trying to be there and supportive. This whole basically 2023 so far is like trying to figure out like how, for my mom, how she can create a new life without him. And I've been trying to support her emotionally like that, because I feel like I'm the one that provides that for her, So I mean, I think that's probably been like, it was traumatic even just seeing him in the hospital, like essentially dying, and like seeing how his body's changing and not getting enough oxygen in his blood, and just like you could see that, and like how his eyes are glazed over because he's not really there. He probably was dead before we even decided to stop, to take the machines off, right? I guess I'm just hope that, I don't know, I hope the experience for him wasn't so painful or anything, So sorry to unload such heaviness into the conversation, but it's obviously for me very relevant.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think having to hear about the experience is like the least that anyone could do, as opposed to living the experience, right? It might be hard to hear about it. It's very sad. I'm sad because, I really liked your dad. I thought he was an amazing man. And, I'm sad to, just by being adjacent to him, that, like you were saying, you didn't get to complete your PhD and have him see that. But for me too, I would have liked to have shown him that as well. And I felt like there's a lot I could have learned from him. And I felt like in general, we got along on a lot of different ways. And so, it's just really sad. obviously that's going to be very relevant. I mean, to be honest, I'm surprised you've been doing as well as you have been. You've expressed, even at the beginning of this podcast, about feeling anxious or insecure about how fast your research has been going. But, it really hasn't been that long since that moment. It's been like 6 months.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's moving at all is like kind of very impressive. And like the fact that there's pressure to begin with, like, kind of makes me angry.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing where I think that I struggled probably 3 months in. Like the first probably 3 months after, I feel like maybe I was running off the adrenaline of all this stuff, and I was just like, go, go, go. And like I made some progress on my project, and I had got some preliminary results, and I presented this annual review, and like I think it went well, and I had something to show, and I felt like I was pretty focused. But after that, it's kind of like more of this wave hit me, and like I started to question a lot about like my place in this environment, like how I don't know if I align with the values. And I was just angry too and upset that like I don't feel like I was really given the space to kind of take time to mourn my dad's death, and to like be also not just that, but like also be there to support my family too, and like have that time with them. It's like, yeah, I had that time during the funeral and stuff, but like that wasn't really enough. And also there was a lot of other conflicts that came up during that time that I feel like I need more time to just process everything, right? Mm-hmm. And to feel like I had all these deadlines all the time, and I had all the structure I had to follow, and all of these requirements, all of these things. There were like so much that I had to do, because now I was on a RA, so I didn't have to teach, but I was only on the research. And because of that, there was like so much more like imposed on me in terms of like expectations, reporting of my work, and all of this stuff, where it was like overwhelming. And I was like angry that like there wasn't even like a space or a talk about, oh, how are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like, do you need time to work through all this? Like, do you need time for yourself just to take space? Because like you've been through a really traumatic experience. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like I lost my father. Yeah. Like he's been in my life, an integral part of my life for my whole life. Yeah. So it's kind of like upsetting that wasn't even like given to me, right? I feel like that's something that you should just give to people. Like you shouldn't be asked to do that, but like, yeah. It's like there was no recognition of that. Like, oh, just keep going. Just like, we don't want to talk about that stuff because it's like too much. Mm-hmm. Like,
do you think that's what's going on for, like, let's say your advisor? Like, because to me it seems like such an inhuman kind of way of responding. Like, I would expect, like, even in some jobs, like in most jobs, like they would give you probably a few months or something off. I don't know what it's like, because I live in my academic world, but it seems like, yeah, there was literally no space given, and it's just like, yeah, keep going, and no recognition or acknowledgement or conversation around it. And like, as your advisor, who has like a direct relationship with you and is the one like kind of guiding these expectations, like, how do you interpret what's going on for him? Like, how does he not, like, do you think it's just he's too occupied in his own world, or you think that the pressures of academia are too much and like he would like to give you that space? Or
I think it's kind of all of those things. I mean, he talked about it a little bit, like with me, and like I was feeling whatever, like at the beginning when it first happened, but yeah, I mean, there wasn't much talk about it at all, really, and it was just like an expectation that I'm gonna just go into and keep doing the work. And I think it's because of those pressures of academia and the fact that that this grant was received, and there was like it's contingent on specific type of progress, and it's like that stuff has to get done, or like, you know, I got this grant and then the things are gonna not work out, and then, you know, what if we lose the money kind of thing. So it's like out of that kind of fear maybe, and also like him being in his own world, like kind of overwhelmed with all of the stuff. And that's part of the problem with academia too. It's not just, I don't think it's just at the graduate student level, although it's really effed up what they do to graduate students. But like at every level, postdoc level, and then even like professorship level, it's like they all are just like overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that they have to do. And like they feel that pressure too, you know. I'm sure that it's like across the board. I think it's just shitty, honestly. Like the culture. So it's like, that's also, so, you know, I think he could have handled it better. And I think he also doesn't know how to talk about it. He's a little bit awkward. Like you know, if I start bringing stuff up and saying like, oh, I need this or that, he's definitely open and willing to like kind of compromise with me on that stuff and like give me what I need in those instances. But like it's not his initial to just give it like that. Like I have to kind of ask him to engage in this like emotional way, and I think he's a little bit awkward with it. But he's definitely a lot better than a lot of other kind of like people I've interacted with in terms of like academia and stuff in general. But there's definitely, I think it says a lot about the culture. And the people who end up getting there are the people that have to like turn a little bit into that to be able to like keep going. I don't know if you agree with that, but
I mean, I've heard tangentially about other people's experiences around a very similar type of trauma of like their father passing away, and basically the grad department not giving two shits about them, you know? And so it does seem like kind of a pervasive thing. It's just shocking to me. It's just like almost, it's like unbelievable. Like,
I mean, it's shocking when you really think about it. I'm like, literally, like, this is one of the most, I mean, maybe some people don't have a relationship with their parents, but like, that's not the default. You're going to think they don't have any relationship. That person means nothing to them. So why does it matter that they died? Like, it's like, he's my father. Like, he means a lot to me. Right? It's just like, how can that just be swept under the rug and like ignored and pretend it didn't happen? It's just like, it's like my life is going to be radically shifted from that. And plus like all of the rest that comes with that too. It's just like, it's just not physically, my dad is gone from my life, and there's all of these things now that like I'm going to be upset about, you know. Like I can't share with him these things, these experiences I wanted to have with him, that now I kind of wish that I had pushed more to get them before he had passed away. And like, you know, just his energy, just like having that connection that I had with him, it's gone, right? Like I don't have him physically, so, you know, you can, I don't know, you can kind of make it in your head if you want, if you knew that person well enough, but it's not the same, right? But then on top of that, you have your other family members that you need to support. Like my mother, for instance. My mother's having a really hard time, understandably. And like I know that I can support her in ways that I don't think anyone else in my family can. So I want to be there for her. So it's like now I also have that I have to leave space for. So not only do I have to have space for myself in the mourning process, I have to create space. Well, I want to create space for my mother and my family in general, to be there for them in a way that I know that I can provide for them, that they don't get from other people.
And I think that's honorable and speaks to your integrity, and you should be able to provide that if you feel like you have it within yourself to do so, and that should be encouraged.
But that's not acknowledged at all, like in these at this level. Or maybe in a lot of workplaces they don't do that either. Maybe it's just a pervasive cultural thing in general, but like family means a lot to me. That's one of my values. And if it meant I have to leave the PhD because they're not okay with me putting energy and time for my family, like I'm always going to choose my family. I'm not going to ditch my family because of PhD. I'm not. And it's like, That's why I think like, oh, should I still stay here? Like, you know, I want to stay here now, but there was a few months that I was really debating it recently because, you know, I felt like, okay, why aren't people giving me this space? Like, I deserve that space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I need time. And it's like always like, oh, where's this thing? Like, are you going to get that thing done? And I'm like, that week I had a hard week and I didn't do any work because I was trying to work through all this stuff emotionally and like support my mom, and I didn't have space for the work. And that should be okay, but it's not okay.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's very frustrating. So I'm like, maybe I should just leave. Like, I can't handle this anymore. I need to take care of myself and my family before worrying about this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fucked up. So, yeah, I guess I just want to pause to thank you for sharing that with me and with everyone. I'm sure that's not easy. I'm glad that you did. It does make me feel sad. But in, I guess, a bittersweet way somehow. I guess I feel appreciative that you are talking about it, and that, I guess, acknowledging the way in which the grad program doesn't provide that space. I'm hoping that maybe talking about it here is a small, tiny step towards giving you, you know, space to like talk about it, and to process it, and to just figure out how you feel about it.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, I appreciate obviously you listening and everyone else out here listening to my story. And I'm sorry if anyone else listening had to go through these kind of experiences.
Yeah.
And some people don't have any support, right? Like I have support from you and my family too, and you know, and to an extent my advisor can be supportive if I really initiate the process.
Yeah, if you advocate for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Some people don't even have that, so that's why this culture needs to change. Yeah. But I'm starting to think it's not just physics. I'm starting to think it's like really pervasive in general. Like even in the workplaces, you know, stories from my sister too, the way that they were just like, yeah, it's something like this happens, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, just keep working. You know, you still have this deadline tomorrow at 12 p.m. I'm like, what? I just went to my dad's funeral. Yeah. You're like, yeah, but it's due tomorrow, so, you know, that kind of stuff. Even when you're in school, some professors, when you're taking classes, they don't even give you that
that's true.
time either. But
okay. So I want to take a second to see if you want to pause and come back, or if you just want to keep going and finish it through.
Can you pause for a second?
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Maybe we'll be back in just 1 second. All right, we're back, people. So we went for a quick break to take Sage for a walk and prep some dinner stuff. So we're on a little bit of a timeline, but yeah, so we took a quick second to take some space and, you know, refresh and recharge. And now we're going to come back and try to finish out the update. Okay. So we finished off Christmas of 2022. So now we're into the new year of 2023. There's Sage. And what we were up to in the spring. So you want me to go first, or you want to share anything?
Yeah, I mean, I guess after, you know, my dad passing and everything happening, and, you know, trying to kind of reevaluate my feelings about being in the program, part of that was realizing too that there was like a part of me that I felt like I wasn't really expressing that much, and I feel like that was, I mean, it's depressing when there's like a whole aspect of yourself that you're not be able to engage with. So for me, I felt a little bit stuck I started to feel a little bit stuck at some point, like in research. And I know a lot of times when I'm feeling stuck in research, it's like an emotional thing that's holding me back. And I realized that this aspect of myself, like my more like artistic, creative side in particular, I like to play music, was kind of like I wasn't engaging with it at all. So, you know, when one of the last things that my dad got, I guess, or he wanted to gift me was this keyboard that I really wanted, which is kind of like has weighted keys and it feels like a real piano. And when I was younger, I used to play classical piano, and you know, had been a while since I really like played. And he wanted to give that to me, and unfortunately passed away before like he could actually see me play it, but it did come eventually like months later because it was back ordered. And then just sitting down and playing again, it kind of sparked this joy in me that I really was craving to engage in. And so I think that this semester, after everything that happened, a big part of it was like rediscovering the other aspects of myself that had been neglecting because of the trying to get this PhD, and it's like only work, right? And I was not even being productive in work because I was like neglecting all of this other part of me that like wants to be there, wants to come out, and wants to engage. So like playing music again was just like, wow, this is like what my soul needed. And like now I feel like I have the space to be able to like even start creating more things, which I always really love to do, you know, like express myself through music. And then another thing that both of us did, like starting at the beginning, was rock climbing. So I guess we can talk more about that in a second. And like, you know, a couple more with the music for me, the creative side, and then now this new sport, rock climbing, which has like been a really great physical outlet. I feel like it's helping a lot in terms of kind of readjusting and finding what are my priorities, and then making sure I'm putting space in for my physical body and feeling strong, because like I actually felt so strong, and also like seeing the progress in the rock climbing that I'm making, and the physical, like how my physical body is changing and how I just feel stronger, and like all these like problems that I've had before with my back and like other issues that I've had have been getting a lot better just by like, you know, making all my muscles stronger. So that's kind of like things that, you know, this new semester, spring 2023, has been for me, you know, after my dad passing, trying to reevaluate everything in my life and seeing, you know, and trying to do right for me. Also, I don't know, also in a way align myself with what also my dad would value too, you know, like what he would want to see for me is essentially to be happy, not just live my life trying to like succeed in this very narrow way. But I think even more so, the kind of success that he wanted to see for me is just that I find my place and I find my happiness and I find what brings me joy, and I have a well-rounded life, and that I can live like a calm life, right, too. Not just always stressed out like everyone's running on the go, you know. So that's like part of my personal journey, is like finding those things this semester and like trying to engage more in them, and just feeling really proud of myself for doing that, and feeling really proud for whenever I make progress on anything, you know. Doesn't only have to be the PhD, it can just be things in my life, you know, even the rock climbing or even writing music, you know. And then I guess I'm gonna obviously give you a chance too, like I mean, I guess what have you been up to in the semester too, and like what do you think about like all the new things you've been?
Yeah, it's just my stuff kind of bleeds into the summer, like to now. But so for my spring, since I passed the quals on my birthday, which was just before before winter break or whatever, so I just passed the quals. So basically I was like out of phase with you by like, you know, a year.
Yeah.
So that meant that I needed to pass the oral exam now, which they call the Prospectus. And so I was really committed to trying to finish that in the semester, which seemed ambitious, but after taking a break from physics and deciding to come back, I was like, okay, I'll come back, but I want to get out of here as soon as possible, basically is what I decided. So I tried working really hard on the Prospectus basically all the spring. And now I, passed the quals. So that was like one of the last main hurdles that I had left. And so it was kind of a little bit frustrating, a little bit hard to deal with because my advisor just seemed like generally unavailable. Like I would meet with him for an hour a week and I'd have all these questions and all these things, and I would be working like really hard, and I make so much progress on the Prospectus, and I felt like what he was contributing, like it was really slowing potential progress down. So that was kind of hard to deal with, and it led to some conflicts throughout the semester. And then there's some crazy stuff that happened towards the end of the spring, but maybe I'll pause to talk about that later. But when it comes to the rock climbing, we started, I forget, like February or something. And I'd been rock climbing a lot in undergrad, maybe for like a year or two. I did a couple challenges at my school, but I hadn't done it in years, and I had always wanted to go. There's a place around town that was supposed to be pretty good, and so we just went, and then it seemed like you fell in love with it right away.
Yeah, I fell in love like instantly the first time we went. I was like, this is exactly what I've been looking for exercise, like, because it's like the mind and the body, it's mental too, like you have to think about the problem solving aspect of it, and then it uses your whole body. It's like a full body workout, and it's also cardio because like the endurance of going up the wall back and forth, and if you keep doing that while like my heart rate was pumping, so it's like an amazing workout, and it just feels so good when you can like ascend the whole the route.
Yeah, and I can really relate to that. I really enjoy rock climbing, so it's I'm glad to be. So now we got membership at the gym, and so we go a couple times a week, or at least we try to, and it's a lot of fun. So since then I progressed a lot. I'm climbing things slightly harder grade than I was back in undergrad. So even in the past couple months, just the way we've been going about it, I guess I've made a lot of progress.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that from the beginning and when we first started to now, it's like you've progressed a lot.
Yeah, so I'm doing I could do most 510As, and I'm on 10Bs, and I guess I should start looking for projects around 511 level. And I could do, in our bouldering, they break it up into like 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6. I could do most 2 to 4s.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying to level up to V4s to V6s. So that's a pretty good amount of progress for a few months, but yeah, I can report a lot of the same things. I really love it, and I feel a lot stronger.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I would recommend it to anyone. I know it's not for everyone, right? But I mean, it's exhausting, and like the next day, like you feel very sore, right? Especially when you first start out. So a lot of people may be not interested in that, but it's for me, for a lot of people, you might find a lot of relief just because you don't have to think about anything other than just trying to find a way to get to the top of the wall, right? And this like takes problem solving skills too.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how people approach the problem in different ways depending on your strengths and weaknesses. Like, my height is, I'm sure I'm like 5'1" at best, right? So it's like I have to find some routes. I have to find a little more creative way if the holds are too far from each other. And then I'm sure, in some ways being sure can be convenient in some cases, and then other people have to find another way. So when I first started up, I ended up hurting my knee, and I really couldn't even walk on it. It kept kind of feeling like it was popping out of the socket. It was unstable. So and that was a good probably a month and a half to 2 months or something that I really couldn't climb that well. 1 month, basically, I didn't really climb, and then the next month I was going slow. But since then, I feel like I've progressed a lot, and it taught me a lot about my own body and how I should be moving it, and about how important warm-ups are, right? I didn't really think about that, but it's really important to warm your muscles up before you start using them. And I think that helps a lot now that we've incorporated that. And along with my physical therapy journey, since I had back problems for a while in the past, physical therapy has helped a lot with that. And then now with the knee, it helped a lot, taught me a lot about all my body parts and how they work in particular. And then I don't know, it's just been such a wholesome experience. I love to know more about my body and how it works. I think everyone should have access to this, even physical therapy, for example. Everyone should have access to a physical therapist just to learn how their body mechanic works and know how they're using it correctly and what muscles they need to strengthen. Even if it's once a year they have some few week tune-up, I think everyone should be entitled to have that. I think it's so important. But so this is I've loved to have this journey, and then doing it with you, it's been super exciting. You know, you've taught me a lot.
Yeah, I've learned a lot with you. But so you want to talk about your award for?
Well, I guess another nice thing about the semester was that at the end, there's a ceremony every year in the physics department, and they give out awards to some of the graduate students and faculty and undergrads. And then I unexpectedly ended up getting a scholarship award, and it came with $1,000, which is nice. And I can't say that I feel like I 100% deserve it. For some reason, I just whenever I get any of these type of things, which I don't often, but I don't know, I just kind of feel like I don't really deserve it, but I can accept it and be grateful for it for sure. But it felt good in a way to be seen, I guess, and acknowledged in some way. So I know that I also have, I want to thank my advisor for that too, because he puts a lot of time with us and stuff and works with us, and I know he spends a lot of time writing these recommendations, because he's the one that recommended me for the award, and he's recommended me for a lot of other stuff that I actually ended up getting, and I got feedback specifically that his recommendation letter was really great, and I know that means that he's putting a lot of time and he cares about me, and that's how he shows his care for us, right, is in that way. So I really appreciate that about him. So I was happy about it, and $1,000 is nice to have some money in the bank.
On our salary.
On our salary, that just gets used up the next month for the necessities, but whatever. It's nice that you have that, and we go out somewhere nice a little bit.
But that's really great. I'm glad that you at least got some recognition. I think you deserve it. So
thank you.
I think it's really nice.
So what about you? How have you been feeling? I know you talked about preparing for the prospectus, and it seems like maybe your advisor hasn't been as supportive as you needed during the spring semester.
That was just a vague impression I had. In general, I was slightly dissatisfied, but it was workable. But there was just I guess you could say an incident with my advisor that kind of was really explosive and made me feel pretty unsafe. I would characterize it as emotionally abusive. And I'm wondering how much detail to go into that. I don't know if we're going to do another podcast about it in the future. And I don't know how safe I feel talking about it here even. But the skinny of it is that basically, I'm trying to work on this prospectus, and, I might have been kind of like pushy in terms of like getting his feedback and maybe being a little bit more disagreeable than usual, in the sense that like, I was trying to take ownership of this document. He expressed that, it was my document and that I have the final say on everything at the end of the day. And he was making all these recommendations for my prospectus that I didn't really understand and I needed clarity around, and he wasn't being very transparent about like why he was making these requests. And so, him being he's very entrenched in the NVC community, and he's how I got exposed to it. I tried engaging in the NVC process because I went through that class last year, and I'm like, okay, he's not really hearing me. Let me try communicating in this way because, he's supposed to be an expert and he should understand, where I'm coming from. So I basically, stated like, okay, I'm observing this and it made me feel this way when you said this, and, can we compromise? Can we work together? Can we come up with a different strategy of like what to do around this prospectus thing? Is like a paraphrase. This is me paraphrasing like my messages to him about a specific conflict. And basically, I met with him in his office and he was furious, I guess you could say. He was very, very angry. And so, yeah, at some points he was like yelling at me. And I got clarity as to like why he wanted certain things around the prospectus because of some vague things that he said. Again, we might go into further detail on a future podcast or something. I don't know whether that's worth it or not, but basically I inferred that like he thought I was totally incompetent and that he thought I didn't understand any of the research that I was doing, and that he wanted to more or less force me to redo all of my work to, I guess, prove that I understand what's going on. Something like that. And, in my opinion, he was unjustly taking credit for some of my work. At some point he was shouting about like, he said something like, oh, can we at least agree that, I've done all the work or something? So one, I think that is just objectively untrue, but also it's kind of disparaging to not only me, but, there's other professors that we work with on this project. Yeah. And for him to claim that he's done everything is just like, wow. So
yeah, it's dismissing your contribution and the other collaborators, right?
Right. And so it made me feel very unsafe working with him in the future because, he was yelling, he was calling me incompetent, more or less calling me stupid, taking credit for my work, and just, it was just like out of nowhere. It felt like to me, he just exploded in like a rage at me because I was just making some requests around my prospectus or whatever and trying to get clarity around why I needed to include certain things that he thought were necessary.
Yeah.
And so that sent me down a rabbit hole of a therapy journey, learning about him, and I think there's some pathology there. I won't say it because I think it could be too triggering or too inflammatory to talk about it in this podcast. But I learned about some certain disorders that were very illuminating to me. And it made me feel kind of not that hopeful about continuing to work with him. It made me feel like kind of unsafe. Like it made me think that the prognosis for our relationship isn't that great. You know, that there's not much hope that it's going to get better. And there's a lot of ways in which it can get worse, you know? So, you know, where I was a year prior to that point of like taking a break or whatever and just coming back, now I was like in that same space, but for an entirely different reason.
Yeah.
Right. I was seriously, and I still am kind of a little bit, debating leaving the program because I'm like, okay, you know, this guy is just like being terrible to me. He's just being like the absolute worst. And now I'm actually aware of like how he's been judging me this whole time. And he's been storing all these like judgments about like how I'm like shitty, about like how I'm a shitty student and a shitty researcher and like whatever, you know, things he'd never expressed in the past. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, how can I continue to work with this guy? You know, I can't trust that he won't have another episode in the future. I can't trust that he's going to have my back and that he won't sabotage me, that he won't continue to take credit for my work. There's a lot of what ifs, you know, of just like, how can I possibly navigate this relationship and get the PhD with this guy? And so I was just like, I don't know if it's worth my mental health to continue, basically. It was no longer about whether I'm competent, because like, despite all the things he said, you know, I guess I've processed my imposter syndrome. I felt like totally competent and totally capable of doing the PhD. And if I wasn't in that space, all those things he said would have really like destroyed me even further.
Like if you were in the space that you were last year or something, where you
Sure,
were debating
yeah.
the first time?
Yeah, if I felt like I was totally incompetent and like didn't deserve to be there and whatever. For him to say all those things, I think he was trying to more or less say the most hurtful thing that he could, because he's gathered all this data about me, about like what my vulnerabilities are, and I've been pretty open and vulnerable with him just in general because he's requested that.
Yeah.
And so he knew all my weak points, but I guess I'd outgrown a lot of them. So I could kind of see it, I guess, a little bit for more of what it was, of like him just trying to be...
Well, to make you feel bad because you made him feel bad, right?
Yeah.
Like he was upset about what you said or something.
Maybe something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. But yeah, so it's just, yeah, I lost my train of thought, but basically he was just being really difficult to work with. And, you know, the alternatives are like going to find another advisor, going to a different school. These are things that like didn't seem that appealing to me because it would set me back years probably in my PhD. And like I said, I'm trying to get out of here as soon as possible. So it's like, I don't know if I'm willing to sacrifice another couple of extra years to get the PhD at this point. So anyways, yeah, I was hardcore in that space of like, maybe I should leave. And it was actually more so than last year when it was just like, should I stay? Should I go? You know, I don't feel very happy here. I have more of a foot out the door now than I did then, you know? Like I've started to look into I started to actually actively look into opportunities outside of grad school, looking at jobs, exploring, trying to set up tutoring, like a tutoring side gig, side business, whatever. Shit like that. Just being open to possibility, I decided to stay in the summer, which is this semester, because, I signed a contract for teaching, and, they pay our tuition waiver and our wage and stuff like that. And like, if I break that contract, not only do I not get paid, I also owe like a few $1,000s. And I'm like, even if I leave the school, I can do my teaching job, at the minimum. So I might as well just stick around and see what happens, like not make any rash decisions. And so me sticking around, I don't know. Should I start talking about summer, or should I pause?
I mean, I'm just wondering, like, just the experience that, you had with your advisor is just so, I don't even know. It's just, it's a terrible experience to have. And it's frustrating too that this is allowed, like this happens, right? And it's like your advisor has so much power over what happens. Yep. And there's like no way that he can have accountability for that.
Yeah.
Or very small little avenues, at least where we are, there really aren't any.
Yeah, basically learning about this whole process and exploring my options. I'm not very hopeful that like going to HR or like trying to talk to someone about my experience in that meeting, about the things he said, and so on, would result in any consequence for him, really. And yeah, he holds all the cards. He has all the power in this situation. We're in a very intimate relationship where I need to work closely with him for, probably about 2 years or something before I finish my PhD. So it's kind of, it's an enmeshed, entangled relationship. It's very hard to like get distance from this type of work relationship.
And once you've been there for so many years with him, right?
Yeah.
And like you're committed to that project, like the material so well. It's like you found their focus, and then just trying thinking, switch to another advisor. That's not even feasible, because some people might just be like, switch to another advisor.
Yeah.
That don't like understand this, like the system, how it works. It's like you can't, like at some point you just can't switch. It's like you dedicated so much your trajectories in this direction. There's no one else that's doing exactly what you're doing. You can't just switch like that,
Yeah. Well, if I did, I'd have to start over.
Yeah. And it's like, is it worth to start over? All the pain that...
Yeah. And I guess to talk more on that, since you're inviting it, is the thing I was grieving was one, the loss of a healthy, the illusion of having a healthy advisor, right? Healthy advisor-advisee relationship. But also, he's also enmeshed in all of the other spaces that I've found safety in, right? Like our diversity program. He's like the only advisor that's basically running it, and he's abandoned that diversity program because of similar things about how it makes him feel. And the NVC community, not feeling safe to return there. I mean, I wasn't that entrenched in there, but it's just sad that like this cool space that I found in this area is already gone. And, so it's just like, and the fact that I felt supported in the past by him, I realized, like, I did a autopsy of our relationship, and I just realized all the ways in which that was like not really as deep as I would have, as I imagined it to be, like really when I thought about it, it's just like all the ways in which I felt supported by him. I realized it was just like, it's just been me this whole time. Like, it's kind of like in spite of him that I've gotten this far. So yeah, it's just a shitty situation to be in. It sucks. But, I feel confident that if I want to, I can persevere through it and get the PhD. And I feel totally competent and capable of doing the research and, making progress and blah, 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 whatever. The thing I'm evaluating at this moment is like, okay, now that I'm there and I truly believe it, like, what do I want to do? Am I willing to accept the cost that comes with that? Like all the things that I was debating about taking a break, why I took a break a year ago about the external environment is still true. The culture is still shit, and all of the externalities is still valid. But now there's this whole other dynamic about like this specific relationship dynamic is like very toxic and potentially, dangerous or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just trying to, when it first happened, when I was processing that, I was broken, kind of a broken person. And it was kind of sad because, I was making a lot of progress on the prospectus and, it was still looking like pretty good in terms of presenting soon, but it slowed me down there for a month or two. But now I'm, back on trying to get the prospectus done and presenting it, soonish. So
it's just like, I mean, I don't know, I'm speechless, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's okay.
It's like, it's just sad that there's so many barriers, right, in getting in. It's not just those logistical barriers, like passing the quals, passing the prospectus, but there's like all of these like emotional barriers too that have to do with the relationships with the people that you're making in these programs, right? And like your advisor. Yeah. Like it's like so many different things that can really make it or break it, and it's like can be really volatile, like just the environment that you're in itself, right? That last year you were debating, I don't know if I can dig this culture anymore. I debate the same thing. Yeah. And you're like, oh, I'll leave. I might leave because of that. That's one of the barriers that a lot of people do leave because of that. And then like, okay, let's say you finally feel comfortable. Okay, I can find a way around the culture. Now I feel confident in myself too. And there's imposter syndrome, right? That some people just think, I'm not good enough, I'm going to leave. But let's say you pass that barrier, emotional barrier, and now you feel confident. And then they throw in, okay, all of a sudden your advisor just gives 180 and everything you ever thought was real about your relationship with him turns out that it really wasn't so real and so deep and so like trusting, the way that you like just opened up, right, to him, and you felt safe. But now all of that stuff was just an illusion. Yeah. And it's like that barrier at the end, that is like, that's like, that's what's making me speechless. I'm like, the fact that, you even got yourself up and out of that after you said it broke you, because it is breaking. That's something that like, it's just like just more and more and more of these things, barriers come up. And then this one is like really breaking. Like it shakes you because you thought you had this relationship with someone for years. And it turns out that it's not even that anymore. It was just an illusion this whole time. It's like it really messes with your head. Yeah. And that you could pick yourself up from that and then put the pieces back and then like really just analyze a picture and see what was going on. Yeah. And then make a decision about that, like, okay, how do I want to proceed? Like, so like rationally too at the same time. It's like impressive, but also it's like, I don't know. It's like, why? It's like, how can you do that? I mean, it's like the thing that you have to learn to do to succeed in physics is to remove your emotions from the situation and just be like, okay, I have to just analyze this logically. And then sometimes I worry that that's the thing that keeps perpetuating this culture, that people are removing themselves from their emotions so much that they forget that that's just an important part of being human, and then we need that. And we need to learn how to engage with people at that level and allow it and be open about it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're speaking about me in general, because I don't feel like I've removed myself from my
No, not
emotions.
you in general. I know, I don't think that you do that, right? But like, I'm just saying I could see how someone going through an experience like that and continuously going through these experiences can eventually just say, I need to detach myself from my emotions and just be all logic and rational or whatever to go through academia in physics, and that's what they become, and then they don't engage with the emotion, and then they perpetuate the culture. I don't think you would be one of those people. You would be one of the people that are making the change, that like are creating that open space.
In some ways I could see how it would be easier to disassociate from the situation, right? To pretend it doesn't exist, or to somehow distance yourself from it. I could see it now being kind of appealing, just because having to sit here and to recognize that this is what I'm going through, and to sit with that instability of like, do I want to be here? Is this what I want? Like, it kind of upends like all these plans and all this stuff and all the, a lot of the stuff I've committed to this point. It's hard. It's really hard to sit with those emotions and to process them, and to like try to engage the situation with like integrity, and it's hard.
It makes me feel sad. I mean, I don't wish that you would be in this situation. No, I wish you didn't have to be in this.
Yeah, you and me both. Yeah, so it's pretty lame. So I'm kind of just like very slightly on the other end of that, so basically I'm cautiously optimistic, I guess you could say, of like going back to the old plan of doing the prospectus, getting out of here as soon as possible, just really try to limit my exposure to this, and like proceed with caution. Now I know some of the things that sets my advisor off, to be careful about how I communicate in the future. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment, but I could easily imagine that changing, and whatever. At least I've started doing some of the work to like prepare
for what's after.
Yeah. Psychological and logical, just being open to the universe, presenting me with opportunities, and not shutting them out. So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure this is stuff that we might go into more detail in a future podcast, but and I think it deserves some more space, definitely. Yes, I know there's probably people out there too that are dealing with situations similar, at least, and that.
Yeah, it's probably it's probably more common than you would think, than I would think.
Yeah, I mean, even from some podcasts we've had that we've talked to some people, we've seen that kind of. We've seen some form of like abuse in this way that they've. Or reasons people leave and stuff. Yeah. I mean, it's important to get the story out there, is what I'm saying. So it might be something worth revisiting in the future in more detail.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of nuances to it too. Just one small thing that came to mind is like there is a little bit of even shame that comes, that I feel internally, about like, falling victim to, this abuse, or to not seeing the signs early enough or whatever, of like, this person asked me to be vulnerable and, share these intimate moments or whatever and trust them. And I chose to do that and they exploited it. And so, that then at the end of the day, I'm looking like a fool, So, logically, I know that's on him. It says more about him than it does me, but there's still like a little thread of just like, how did I let myself get into this situation, But anyways, just like stuff like that. There's a lot of things I've realized about, this relationship like that.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to be as authentically yourself as you can be.
Yeah.
And like, that's what you were doing. And you were, I think, acting with integrity the whole time with your relationship with him. And you were willing to be open. And I think that's something that's so important in general. Like, it's really unfortunate when those are the people that tend to be getting hurt more, are the people who are like willing to take that risk and be open. But like, that does open the environment for more people to be open. And in that way could be healing, but it should never be on. It's like, in the way that I think about it, it's like, I want to do that, but then at the same time, I'm like, why do I deserve to be the one that gets hurt? Because I am being vulnerable. But I mean, so I think it's a noble thing in a way, you know what I mean? Like, to actually be able to be vulnerable, even knowing that there is a risk that you're going to get hurt.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that, but I also try to be pragmatic in the sense that I think there's a fine line between noble and foolish. Like I said, so,
like staying with an abuser, like you marry an abuser and then you stay with them when they continuously abuse you.
No, I'm not saying that that's foolish, because now I have a lot more sympathy for that person. But I'm just saying sometimes before you entangle yourself into a relationship, the writing is on the walls, I can't think of a obvious example at this moment, but I'm just saying sometimes, it might not be so noble and it might just be a little bit, whatever. But
I don't know. I don't always think it's that easy to see that.
Oh yeah.
It's easier, it's like, what did they say? What's that expression?
Hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. But so, anyways, do you want to talk about some of the stuff we've been up to recently, or do you want to talk about your summer school? Or
yeah, I mean, recently we've been doing some traveling, and I guess in the summer is a little bit of a summer of traveling. I haven't been traveling in a long time since COVID.
Yeah.
So it was nice that we got to go on a trip to Cancun.
Yeah.
And it was around Father's Day, so it was a little bit, my dad's Mexican. We went to a kind of a Playa del Carmen, like a few years, maybe like 10, not a few years, like 10 years ago. We went together as a family, and it was kind of all-inclusive resort. So, when we went to Cancun, it's pretty close. It's a little bit north of that. We also went to an all-inclusive resort with your family. And it was nice. It was nice to be there. It was nice to relax. And it was nice to engage with people and, like, be there emotionally for people. Like, there's a part of me that in physics, I don't really get that, like, hands-on kind of talking to people and, like, working through, like, emotional issues, having that kind of connection. I don't get as much in physics, so it's nice to get that with your family.
Well, that's interesting because you still engage with people, right? You still have people in your research group and stuff like that. So it's just like, you think there's something different about those people then?
Yeah, I agree. You do have that, but I don't know. Sometimes it's not as vulnerable in terms of like the way that I connect with some of my coworkers and stuff.
Yeah.
Is it like, it's not like they're as open or about their experience and their emotional experience and as vulnerable as maybe I had the connection with your family, and maybe it's just the individual people, and that's why. But regardless, I did have that more, and it was nice to do that. Now it's also exhausting for me, like socializing a lot, so
Yeah.
so it was, you know, it takes a lot of energy, so it was kind of like I don't know, bittersweet for me, because I enjoy it, but at the same time it's exhausting, so I have to kind of replenish my energies after that. I don't know, what did you think?
Yeah, it was good. It was a pleasant experience. I'd never been to Cancun before, so seeing the activities that we did was fun. Overall, it was a fun experience. Yeah, for me it was also exhausting though. In general, there's been like a lot of family coming around and doing stuff, and I haven't seen them in years, so it's just like, feels like everyone's trying to get their time in all at the same time, like since it's been building up for years.
Yeah.
And you know, it's nice, it's good, I enjoy it, but it's also exhausting. So you know, trying to balance that while, you know, doing my prospectus and dealing with my advisor and all that shit. It's a lot, but I'm hanging in there. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it was, trying to do anything in general, but with all the work looming and stuff. And I mean, I feel like I haven't been as productive as I wanted to be in the summer, and then, you know, all these people visiting and then going, it's been nice, but also I feel kind of like a little bit bad about that. But then I'm like, you know, I deserve to be able to take a break from work and see other people and connect. And I feel like it's been kind of more important to me now to like try to connect more with people and family and stuff. You know, after my dad passed away and stuff, I realized, you know, I haven't really been seeing my Mexican cousins that much. And I haven't really been like, you know, with other family members too, even just in the US. And I feel like they feel the same way because they've been visiting like crazy. Like they've been visiting my mother like crazy, and I've been able to see them or talk to them through that. And then, you know, it makes me realize it's important to me, and I wouldn't want to like miss more connection with my family. So I think that's something that I'm going to probably want to do a little bit more in the future, is just try to connect more with family in general. But I also need my space and time because I get overwhelmed with too much socialization. Yeah. But yeah, and then talking about that, I have a summer school coming up, so I'm going to Brazil, Sao Paulo, in 2 weeks or so for a summer school. It's school on modern amplitude methods for gauging gravity theories. So it's like, last year I went to a summer school that I talked about already. It was like on QCD and electroweak theory. But you know, it was interesting and I learned some new things, but it wasn't exactly what my research is. But like this one on gravity and amplitude techniques is like basically exactly what my research is on. So I think I'm excited about it because I think it'll be interesting and I'll be able to learn more about the other aspects of like the gravitational community that I don't necessarily know much about, and then see how it connects with mine, because they're bringing up all the different types of gravity people together. And then they invited me to go to a workshop after that. So the summer school's 2 weeks, starting July 24th until August 4th. Then there's like a week in between, and then after that there's like a workshop in the same university in Sao Paulo. And that workshop is for like different people from all different areas of the gravity community are going to come and like give talks about their work, and then it's just going to be like maybe 1 or 2 talks a day, and then a bunch of discussion. And it's kind of like to help, I think it's hopefully a seed for new ideas or something for like future research. I'm just going as a student observer. I don't really have like, I'm not that advanced yet in my research to like really be able to give a talk on it. But it's nice to have been invited to that, and it's nice to be able to connect with the community and see what's going on and see what those events are like, because part of this for me is to see whether I do actually see like a space in this community for me that I feel safe and that I could see a future in. I think my advisor really would want me to continue in academia, but I'm not so convinced about that, because as right now, like the culture is something that it's not sustainable for me to be able to live in a culture like that all the time. So I have to kind of see if there is a space for who I am, my values, like how I want my life to be like. Is there space for that? And if not, then I don't think I can do it, and that's sad. But if there is, then maybe I'll keep exploring it. We'll see.
Yeah. So how long is the workshops, and so how long will you be in Brazil?
So the workshop is 3 weeks. So I'm going to be in Brazil total about like 6 weeks. So maybe a little bit less than 6 weeks, but about 6 weeks. I'll be in Brazil. So, I mean, yeah, I know I talked about last year too, the 10 days. I already was feeling overwhelmed. So now for the 6 weeks, I'm a little bit nervous, I'm not going to lie, about how it's going to go. Because a completely new country. I've never been to the southern hemisphere either. So, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to be, but I'm hoping that what I learned from last year, I can take some of that and maybe it'll be a better experience this time, because I've had a little bit of training. So now I can, I've been mentally preparing myself for months now, and I knew I got into this summer school. And so hopefully it'll go better. I mean, the material is definitely more interesting to me because it's like really is what I'm interested in, what I'm doing. So in that way, maybe hopefully it will be less overwhelming, but I don't know. But it is a more advanced topic, so I feel like I might feel more overwhelmed because I'll have more imposter syndrome. And I don't know. I just don't always really think of myself as the best student. So I know it's a story I keep telling myself, and I probably should stop that pattern in my mind. I should probably start saying good, positive things about me as a student. But it's hard to break that habit of years. So, I'm nervous about it. But, I just want to go in there and be authentically myself. So it's like, I shouldn't think I need to be this particular way to be a good researcher. I should just be who I am. And it's not, maybe it's atypical, but if I can't be accepted as that in the community, then it's probably not the community for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and what makes you authentically you should be your superpower wherever you are. Right?
Exactly. And it should be recognized as that's my superpower. Yeah. As it should be for anyone. Yeah. And whatever their superpower is. So if they can't recognize that, then I guess that's just bye-bye. Yeah. Physics, I'll do something else. Maybe I'll become a musician and write music or something.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'll be going to visit you for a week.
Yeah.
While you're there.
So, the week that's off, I'm excited about that.
Yeah. So that'll be my first time in the Southern Hemisphere as well. So it's going to be a big adjustment. And like I said, I'm preparing for my prospectus and stuff like that. So it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. But hopefully it's going to be fun.
Yeah. It's going to be fun.
So anyways, is there anything else you wanted to share?
No, I mean, I'll definitely be catching you guys up when I come back from Brazil, and we'll do I'll let you know how well my training went and whether no, it's gonna be fine. I think it's gonna be okay. But,
it could be good to debrief when you come back.
Yeah, so we can debrief, and if I'm not too emotionally rattled, no, I'm just joking. I can debrief.
But that's Sage drinking water. But so I think that's what we got for you. I mean, that's I think our update, everything we've been up to the past year. Recapping it, it's been crazy.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
2022 and 2023 have been, there was a lot of dramatic shit that happened, just like over and over and over again. But there have been good moments too.
Yeah, there have been good moments too.
There have been good
miracles.
Things. Yeah.
Seiji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, my hope is that we can continue to be making more content.
Yeah.
So it's not just a once a year.
Yeah.
We already have some content in the work. So
Mm-hmm.
in addition to this, hopefully, you'll be able to see some more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm happy that in this last year that I've learned to engage more in like other parts of myself, like music again, writing music again, and then rock climbing. And my body is like so strong, and I haven't had any flare-ups on my back problem, and like I feel like really strong and healthy. So that's such an important thing.
Yeah.
This is to take care of your physical body.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
So hard moments, but good things too that we learned about ourselves, and so I hope we just continue to grow as the years go on. Yeah.
But so if you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. I know it's been a bit of a longer update, but there's been a lot to share. And yeah, we got lots of more content coming to you hopefully shortly. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch y'all on the next podcast.
Yeah, we love you. Thanks for listening.
All right. Bye, everyone.